Hey everybody, again, this is Sri, and you are listening to BizBuzz, what matters most for your small business, sponsored by My Work Belt. And My Work Belt is a software that is helping service-based small businesses to run, organize it, and be efficient in running their business. And thus they can survive and thrive. And today we have a guest, Dan Fleetwood. And Dan is a business and executive coach. And prior to that, he is a MBA graduate from Michigan State. And Dan lives in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Dan, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you very much for the warm welcome. I'm doing very well, thank you.
Excellent. Dan, as you and I were talking about, you are a business coach. Now, are you business coach for a large enterprises? Are you business coach for small businesses, or all together? What is that you coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question because business coach is something that can be a myriad of different things. And I love and have a passion for small business. I think the impact that small business has in the community is just tremendous. So I tend to stay very focused on small business companies and primarily working with the business owner, but sometimes with an executive within a small business as well, but very focused on maximizing the impact within the community. And I find that's best accomplished through small businesses.
That is very reason I want you to be a guest on this podcast, because the whole podcast objective is to help share the knowledge for small businesses so they can thrive, survive, and thrive. So that leads me to a next question for you. So, what is a basis of a small business in your perspective? Who
Well,
do you call a small business?
how do I define a small business? I would
Yes,
say,
yes.
you've got that going to be upwards. There's so many different ways to define it. I would
I
say,
know, I know.
um,
What is your perspective? What is your take on the small business?
yeah, upwards of 20 million in revenue. You get much larger than that. And I think they kind of, more in that medium business space. And then I would say, 30 to 40 employees. It can be higher than that as well. It kind of just depends on the complexity of the company, but that's what I typically view as small business is 30 to 40 employees, 20 million in revenue. But there is no like one size fits all answer to that, unfortunately. I
Oh,
know
there
some.
is no, there is no. If you ask for small business administration, they said up to $500 million is a small business.
Oh yeah,
And
that's a very different definition.
so that is why I'm very curious to know what is the definition of small business in different. Not you're not the first one I've asked. I've asked many people. So as you have been working with small businesses for so many years, my question to you is, what is one challenge that your observation that small businesses go through generally?
To me, one of the biggest things that you see is lost opportunity when it comes to understanding and articulating out their values, both
Hmm?
internally and then externally with their client base. It's something that I often find like it's one of the first things that I review with a new client is we talk about their values. Why did they start this business in the first place? What resonated with them to go out and be an entrepreneur or to, purchase the business from somebody else? And to me, that is the rocket fuel that fuels the business when it is properly established and
Hmm?
also talked about within the community of employees and of clients. It's very.
When you talk about value, so you're talking about value for the business owner, or you're talking about a value that business brings to the table for the customers?
I mean more on the like the side of establishing the why are we doing what we're doing, not necessarily the nuts and bolts side of things, but I am in the business of business coaching because I believe in growth, and growth is one of my values. And what I mean by that is I want to help individuals grow so that they're the most effective person they can be, whether that be within their business role or growing their business around them, and then also growth for the business community because that just feeds our greater community as a whole. So that's one of my business values. And I articulate that to every one of my clients so they know, like, you better be growth minded. Otherwise, we probably won't work well together. It's just that's values are so important that they are, connected together, both on the internal side with employees and then on the external side with who you partner with and who you work with.
When you talk about growth mind, right? Give me three different characteristics when you see them. Okay, this gentleman or this business is growth mind, or no, they're not in a growth mind. It's not going to be work. It's not going to be very important. So, what are the three different characteristics you identify that as a growth mind?
The first thing that comes to mind is somebody that is curious.
Mm,
So they're willing to ask questions like, "Hey, Dan, that's really cool what you just said, but I have no idea what you just said. Like it sounded like it made sense, but I didn't actually understand it." Somebody's got to be willing to raise their hand and say, like, I want to learn more about that. I want to better understand it. And then I would say, excuse me, I would say related to that, also somebody who's has a high level of humility and is willing to say, like, I can't do this on my own.
mm, mm,
For my client base, the people that I work best with are those, highly visionary leaders who have, 10 different ideas and they want to go in all of those different directions, but they need to get
right.
focused on one thing to be successful. Those are people that I work very well with, so long as they're willing to pause and say, I need somebody to help me focus. I can't actually go in 10 different directions at once. Um,
So, if
but
a business owner, thank you. So, if you look at a business owner, you can clearly um, come to a conclusion. Okay, this person is a growth minded because he's curious, number one, and he's raising the hands and he's asking questions, and number three, this person is expressing and demonstrating the humility in his dialogue. So when you see these three characteristics, you can come to that, okay, this person is growth minded or this entity is a growth minded entity. Is that a fair assessment?
yeah, absolutely.
Now, when you talk to the business owners, those who are um, having a question in mind that vulnerability, some are stating that you should be open to share your vulnerability to the market, and some says that no, you should not. What is your take on it in relates to vulnerability?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of vulnerability. You have to be able to be transparent with people about what you're good at and what you're not good at. And
Mm-hmm.
people respect and respond to that. I have an exercise that I go through clients with called your areas of awesomeness. And it's really a focus on getting the client to understand this is what made me so successful in my business, and this is what I want to do more of. But also on the flip side of your areas of awesomeness is your areas that of opportunity, things that you're not skilled at, things that you don't want to lean into. And you have to be willing to tell people, hey, this is not a specialty of mine. You're better suited to go elsewhere for this, until you either shore up your capabilities of that, or what I usually recommend is you can't be everything to everybody. It actually might be strategically better to just cut that out of a service offering or be transparent and say, no, that's not something I can do. For me, I told you that I work very well with visionary leaders. Well, those like high operation minded leaders that are very
Mm-hmm.
task oriented, I,
Yes.
I I can work with them, but I also know that am I as effective with them?
Mm-hmm.
Likely, I'm very transparent with them about that because I want to share that vulnerability of saying that, I might not be the right coach for you because coaching is a very personal arrangement. You're talking very deep and very openly about all aspects of the business and inevitably the person as well, because it's that person who is driving the success in that business.
And certainly, coaching is an area that where both parties have to have a great deal of trust, because your client needs to have trust that they can openly share their shortfalls. Uh, Sharing the shortfalls, especially for a leader to somebody else, is very, very challenging in their mind.
Yeah.
So that's very important. So that's great. Thank you very much for sharing that. So, in your observation, small business owners need to be having a growth mindset and be able to willingness have a willingness to share their vulnerability, and these two will help them to grow in their mind, in their business, and as personally and as business. Is that a right summarization? Am I doing?
Yeah, that's a great summarization. Absolutely.
Excellent. I hope all the audience are taking this into forward. So take this mindset, and hopefully these tips and these information that we are receiving from Dan is helpful for you. Dan, thank you very much for sharing your experience and knowledge with us, and greatly appreciate being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invite. It was a pleasure.